My name is Lisa, and this is what it looked like the last time I sat at my parents' table. Mom chewed in silence. Dad stared at the muted TV like nothing could touch him. Jake nodded from the far end, barely there. And Lindsay, my sister, lifted her mimosa and smirked. "It's cute you still show up like you matter," she said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dad chuckled. Mom kept eating. No one told her to stop, not even Jake. I buttered a stale bagel, jaw tight, forcing each bite down like it was the only thing anchoring me to the chair. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I finished, said I had errands, and let the door close behind me. In the car, I gripped the wheel until my knuckles hurt. That wasn't pain anymore. That was a clean break. That night, I opened my laptop. Hulu, Netflix, HBO, Spotify, even Mom's Hallmark subscription she begged me to add last Christmas. All in my name, all on my credit card. Because once upon a time, they didn't know how to set up accounts, and I, like always, fixed it. Click, cancel, one by one. 3 days later, the group chat lit up like a bonfire. Lindsay complained about Wi-Fi. Mom asked if the TV was broken. Dad dropped a random thumbs up. Jake stayed quiet. No one asked me. They never did. But that was only the beginning. I opened another folder, labeled TC Property, Traverse City, the so-called family getaway my dad had shifted into my name 4 years ago, back when he was worried about liens. He called it temporary. He never brought it up again, neither did I, until now. I sent the photos to an agent, priced it to move. By Friday, I had a cash offer. The phone rang during dinner, cold spaghetti over the sink. A lawyer's voice on the line, clipped and formal. "Ronald Berenger, representing your father. Is the property listing a mistake, or did you act unilaterally?" I told him to check the county records. By Wednesday, 6 figures hit my account. By Thursday, Dad screamed into the phone about betrayal, about blood. I let him finish, then reminded him, every deed, every receipt, every email was mine to show, and I wasn't paying his lawyer this time. Here's what no one tells you about breaking from a family you've been financing. It isn't loud, it's precise. You stop replying, you stop paying, and suddenly they realize you were the scaffolding all along. If you've ever held a family together until your hands went numb, stay with me. Because peace doesn't come with applause, it comes with silence. And if this finds you on a Sunday, you're not alone. Family Power Stories is where we speak the truth. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you've ever had to learn that silence can be your sharpest answer. The cursor blinked on my screen, over an unsent email. Subject line already typed. Transfer documents attached. The next Sunday felt like walking into a play where I'd already been written out of the script. The driveway was full. Mom's sedan crooked on one side, Lindsay's leased Audi with a scrape on the bumper, Dad's truck blocking half the grass. Inside, the smell of sausage and coffee floated through the hallway, but it wasn't warm. It was routine, mechanical, like the air that hums in an office building. No one looked up when I stepped in. The dining room light buzzed faintly overhead. Mom was rinsing plates she hadn't even used yet. Dad kept the TV on mute, eyes glazed toward the sports ticker. Jake hunched at the far end, scrolling his phone. And Lindsay, still in her pajamas, hair piled high, held her mimosa like a trophy. I stood there long enough to feel the cold draft from the front door against my back. Not a single hi, not even a fake smile. I pulled out a chair, slow, like I was trespassing in my own family. The scrape of wood on tile cut through the silence, but still nothing. So I ate. The bagel was stale, edges rough on my tongue. I buttered it anyway, trying to act like the chewing, the swallowing, the small motions could fill the hole where acknowledgement should have been. The silverware clinked in rhythm, but no one spoke until Lindsay raised her glass. "It's cute you still show up like you matter," she said again, louder this time, like she wanted the walls to record it. Dad chuckled, a low grunt that said more than words ever could. Mom didn't even flinch. Jake lowered his eyes. I wanted someone to say, "Stop, enough." I wanted the silence to crack, but the only sound was the buzz of the ceiling light and the faint tap of Lindsay's nails on her phone. That's when I understood. I wasn't family. I was function. For years, I had been the one setting up streaming accounts, co-signing loans, fixing Wi-Fi, paying bills, just until things even out. No thank yous, no repayment, just expectation. And now, when I dared to show up in the flesh, I was treated like a ghost who forgot she'd already been buried. After brunch, I left without touching dessert. No one asked where I was going. No one cared. Back home, I opened my laptop and stared at the rows of tabs. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, HBO Max, accounts all tied to my name. Passwords I'd created, cards I'd entered, monthly charges that bled me dry while everyone else sipped mimosas. I clicked cancel one by one. Each confirmation email felt like a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. By the time I shut the lid, my inbox was full of automated, "We're sorry to see you go." I wasn't sorry. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Why is everything disconnected?" Then the group chat exploded. "Lindsay, Wi-Fi down? Who messed with the accounts?" "Mom, TV's broken again." "Dad." Not a single message directed at me. Not even a guess that maybe the person who paid for it all had pulled the plug. I read every bubble like a spectator at a play I no longer had lines in. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type. I let them talk around me, like they always did. The next morning, I walked into my kitchen, poured coffee into a chipped mug, and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. TC Property, Traverse City. That house had been my name on paper for 4 years, a temporary transfer Dad engineered when he feared liens. I remembered the way he'd slid the documents across the table, telling me, "Just until things stabilize." Stabilize never came. He never mentioned it again. Neither did I. Now, with one email to an agent and a set of photos I'd taken the summer before, the house was back on the market. 2 offers landed within days. I chose the cash buyer. When Dad's lawyer called, his voice was smooth, professional, but laced with panic. "Your father wants to confirm if this is a misunderstanding," he said. "If perhaps you acted unilaterally." I let the silence stretch. Then I told him to check the county records. By Wednesday, the money hit my account. 6 figures. Not a gift, not a theft, just the clean transfer of what had been mine on paper all along. Dad's rage came the next night, raw and unfiltered. "You betrayed us! You stole from your own blood!" he shouted. I let him finish before answering, calm and steady. "Every deed, every email, every receipt is in my name. If you want to take me to court, I'll be there. But this time, I'm not paying for your lawyer." The silence on the line was louder than his shouting. Then he hung up. That weekend, I found my car splattered with eggs, yolks dripping into the vents, stinking for days. A week later, shredded paper jammed into my mailbox. Another week, a clean slash through my tire, then another. Always just enough to cost me money, never enough to justify insurance. I kept every receipt in a folder labeled petty. Because this was what family meant here. Humiliation at the table, sabotage in the driveway, and silence everywhere else. And yet, I kept showing up. Not to them, but to myself. Each document I saved, each bill I stopped paying, each account I closed, it was a tally, proof. But the pain still sat heavy. Every memory of laughter in that house blurred into the sound of a lawyer's voice telling me I was mistaken, a father calling me a thief, a sister sipping mimosas like cruelty was champagne. I realized then, the wound wasn't in losing them. The wound was in seeing how little they cared I was gone. And that truth burned longer than any egg yolk left on a windshield. Jake's text came late one night. "They're losing it here. I think Dad broke the hallway door. Lindsay's calling everyone. Mom hasn't talked in a day." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I typed back, "How are you?" His reply, "I need to get out." The image of him standing in that house, quiet, cornered, invisible, cut deeper than anything Lindsay ever said. The next morning, I was already in my car, the folder of receipts in the passenger seat. Because pain has a way of multiplying until you decide to break the pattern. The door of my brother's room opened. He stood there with a backpack and his PS4. No one stopped him. No one even asked where he was going. And that was when I knew leaving wasn't the betrayal. Staying was. The apartment I found for Jake was old, the kind of building with radiators that hissed at night and hallways that smelled faintly of dust and takeout. But it was clean, affordable, and most importantly, it wasn't home. When we walked inside for the first time, Jake just stood there in the middle of the empty living room, his hands shoved deep into his hoodie pocket. The blinds rattled slightly from a draft, and for a moment he looked too small for the space. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I told him it was a loan, not a gift. First month, last month, deposit. I'd cover it all, but every dollar had to be paid back. His nod was slow, deliberate, the kind you give when you know there's no trick, no hidden string, just responsibility. That night, after I dropped him off with groceries, an old mattress, and a Wi-Fi router under his own name, I sat in my car longer than I needed to. The parking lot was lit by a single flickering bulb. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "This is the first time I've heard myself think in months." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence from the rest of the family wasn't peace. It was strategy. At least, that's how it felt. For weeks, no calls from Mom, no sarcastic texts from Lindsay, no voicemails from Dad, just the dull throb of absence. But absence is its own language, and in this family, it usually meant they were plotting. I went about my days quietly, but the evidence folder on my desktop grew heavier. Family fallout, I called it. Every receipt from new tires, every photo of egg yolks dripping across my windshield, every scan of the deed transfer. I lined them up like soldiers on parade, not to use, yet, but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. I wasn't inventing the cruelty. It was documented, time-stamped, undeniable. Then came the letter. Folded into a torn envelope, shoved into my mailbox without a stamp. Mom's handwriting, shaky cursive I hadn't seen in years. "Please don't hurt the family anymore." I read it once, twice, then again, trying to find the apology that wasn't there. Nothing. No mention of the years I paid bills, no acknowledgement of the house in my name, just a plea that painted me as the one swinging the hammer while they held the nails. I burned it in a ceramic dish on my balcony. The smoke curled into the night like a confession I refused to keep. Jake was trying. That's what kept me steady. His first $100 payment came with a screenshot. No excuses. The next month, another $100. By the third, he sent $150. "Feels right," he texted. He'd picked up extra shifts at the hardware store, even talked about enrolling in night classes. I saved every transfer screenshot in the same folder as his lease, not because I needed proof against him, but because I wanted to remember what accountability looked like when it was real. In the middle of that quiet, the storm found another way in. My phone buzzed with a fraud alert, new auto loan inquiry under my name. My stomach tightened. A dealership in the next town over, someone claiming to be me, trying to finance a car. I called immediately. The manager's voice was cautious. "She said she was authorized to apply under your name. No ID, just details." I didn't need the name. It was Lindsay. I froze my credit tighter, filed a fraud report, and said nothing. Let her wonder why her attempts kept failing. The next time I saw Uncle Brad, it was by accident. Safeway, near the eggs. He leaned in too close, voice low. "Your mom says you emptied the family accounts, sold the house out from under them." I laughed once, short and sharp. The house that was in my name for 4 years. His eyes darted around like the cereal boxes might be listening. "Between you and me, nobody really buys their story. They've been dramatic since you were kids. Everyone knew Lindsay was the favorite." He patted my shoulder, almost apologetic. "We're staying out of it, but not everyone thinks you're the villain." That landed heavier than I expected. Validation, even whispered in a grocery aisle, has weight. A few days later, my cousin Allie pulled me aside downtown, bought me a coffee, sat me down, and said almost the same thing. "Your parents are telling people you turned your back on them, but I don't buy it. They always expected too much from you." Her words weren't rescue, but they were recognition, enough to stitch a little strength back into the quiet. Meanwhile, the house I'd left behind kept curdling. Jake told me Dad had started locking his office door, as if paperwork could shield him from disappointment. Mom was rearranging furniture again, relabeling jars, Pretending order in the kitchen meant control of the family. Lindsay had moved back full-time after her Audi faced repossession. She drove a 10-year-old Honda now, stomping around like the walls still bent to her voice. They erased me the way some people erase pencil marks, roughly, until the page tears. Mom took down photos with my face in them. Dad told anyone who'd listen that I'd stolen from them. Lindsay spun stories online, cryptic posts about betrayal, about family snakes. But the silence toward me remained absolute. No call, no text, no confrontation, just erasure. At night, my apartment was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. I'd open the family fallout folder and run the numbers again. $11,000 saved since canceling Lindsay's loan payments. $3,000 spent setting Jake up. Nearly $8,000 left over, sitting in my account where it belonged. Each line was a reminder. The distance was paying off, literally and emotionally. But silence can sharpen into suspicion. Jake called one night from a borrowed phone. His had been cut off after Mom removed him from the family plan. His voice was tight. "Lindsay said they're going after you again. Not through the courts. She didn't say how. Just that you'd regret turning your back on blood." I let the words echo in the empty room. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but it was close enough. Jake hesitated. "I don't think they know what to do without you." I exhaled slowly. "That's the problem. They never knew what to do with me either." I started saving more than receipts. I screenshotted texts, archived voicemails, kept copies of every fraud alert. Each new folder on my desktop was another layer of armor. I didn't know what angle they'd come from next, but I wanted every fact sharpened and ready. The strange thing, the more I documented, the calmer I felt, like preparation itself was a form of revenge. Not shouting, not slamming doors, just silence, orderly and undeniable. They wanted me erased. I was writing myself in ink. Weeks stretched. Jake kept sending small payments, sometimes just $80, sometimes $200. Always on time, always with a note. Still trying. Each ping of a new transfer landed like a stone on the other side of the scale. Proof that someone in that family understood effort, understood accountability. The rest? They were drowning in the house they clung to, choking on the silence they created. And I stayed quiet. Because silence, when chosen, can be louder than any scream. Late one evening, my credit app pinged again. Another attempt. This time, a store card application using my Social Security number, blocked immediately. I stared at the alert glowing blue in the dark apartment. My coffee mug was cold beside me. The cursor blinked on the screen like a pulse. Somewhere in that house, someone was still trying to live on my name, still clawing at the life they pretended I owed them. And all I had to do was nothing. The fraud alert kept flashing in my mind like a warning light I couldn't turn off. First the auto loan, then the store card. Different weeks, same attempt, same thief. I didn't need to guess who. Lindsay had always believed other people's resources were extensions of her own. My credit score was just another purse she thought she could rummage through, and when I froze her out, she reacted the way a child does when the candy jar gets sealed, by breaking glass. That night, I sat in my apartment, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the fraud notice and wondered how far they'd go. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but from recognition. They weren't done. They never would be. Jake called the next day. His voice was hushed. Dad tried to hack into my email. I saw the login attempt. I pressed my forehead against the cold window glass. Why? I don't know. Maybe to see what we're saying. Maybe to look for you. I closed my eyes. It was escalation, plain and simple. First eggs on my car, then slashed tires, then fake applications, now hacking. The message was obvious. If I wouldn't give, they'd take. The following weekend, I drove to Jake's apartment with frozen meals and a secondhand chair someone had left by the dumpster. He was fiddling with the wobbling legs, trying to make it stand straight. "They're freaking out," he said quietly. "Mom doesn't talk to anyone. Dad barely comes upstairs. Lindsay's calling everyone she knows, trying to find a way around you. And now they're saying—" He trailed off. "Saying what?" "That they're going to make you regret it." Not through the courts, something else. The words dropped heavy between us. Not a direct threat, but close enough. I felt the old fear rise, the kind that whispers maybe you should just fix it, pay it, give in, keep the peace. But I swallowed it down. I looked at Jake. He was 20-something, still awkward in his own skin, yet paying me back in small, steady amounts every month. He was trying, and they were punishing me for that, too. "They don't know what to do without you," he said softly. "They never knew what to do with me," I answered. The weeks after blurred into a kind of siege. My mailbox filled with random junk, stuffed so tightly I had to dig it out by hand. My tires kept getting slashed, always one at a time, like they wanted me inconvenienced, not destroyed. Each repair receipt slid into the petty folder. And still, I said nothing. The silence was eating them alive. That much I could tell from the fragments Jake relayed. Lindsay lost the Audi after 2 more missed payments. Dad spent whole days in the basement, beer in hand, remote clutched like a lifeline. Mom rearranged furniture compulsively, like shifting chairs could rewrite history. And yet, no apology came. No phone call to ask why or how or if I was okay. Just stories spread to relatives, painting me as the villain. When Uncle Brad leaned in at the gas station and whispered, "Heard they're still mad, heard you're still winning," I almost laughed. Winning didn't feel like this. Winning didn't smell like egg yolk baked onto car paint. Winning didn't keep me up at night, waiting for the next attempt on my credit. But losing would have been worse. The lowest point came one Monday morning. I opened my bank app, half expecting calm, only to see a new notification. Unrecognized transaction attempt. Another blocked charge. Another attempt to pry open the doors I'd bolted shut. For a second, my vision blurred. I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white. What if something slipped through? What if, despite all my preparation, one of their petty jabs landed a real blow? The thought of them draining me dry again made my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, to drive over to that beige dining room, slam my folder of receipts onto the table and demand they look me in the eye. But I didn't. Instead, I sat down at my desk, opened the family fallout folder, and started scanning more. Every transfer from Jake, every fraud alert, every letter from the lawyer, every photo of damage. I organized them into subfolders by date, by category, by source. If they wanted a war, I'd be ready. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with proof. That night, my phone buzzed again. Jake. "They're unraveling. Lindsay said out loud she wishes you were never born. Dad didn't even flinch. Mom cried in the kitchen but said nothing." I closed my eyes. The words landed, but not like a knife, more like an echo of something I'd already known. For years, I'd been told without words that I didn't matter. Now they'd finally said it out loud. And strangely, it steadied me. Because if that was the truth, then what was left to fear? A month after cutting the last cord, I lit a candle in my apartment. The flame flickered against the dark window, and for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to call. Not Mom, not to Dad, not Lindsay. The quiet wasn't punishment anymore. It was proof. Proof that they had no hold left. Proof that silence could be stronger than any scream. I sat back, watched Jake's rent payment hit my account, on time with a small note attached, still trying. The rest of them could slash, hack, lie, spin, but they couldn't touch the one thing they'd never given me: peace. The next morning, as I locked my door, I found a scrap of paper shoved under the mat. No envelope, no signature, just 4 words scrawled in messy handwriting. "You'll regret this soon." I stared at it until the letters blurred, then folded it carefully and slipped it into the folder with all the rest. Because fear, when documented, becomes evidence. And evidence is the sharpest weapon of all. The note under my door was sloppy, 4 words written like an afterthought. "You'll regret this soon." No signature, no pretense. I didn't panic. I slid it into the family fallout folder with the others. Paper doesn't shake when you hold it right. But I knew the next step wasn't waiting. It was striking back. I spent the weekend pulling every file together, the receipts for tires, photos of yoke dripping off my hood, fraud alerts, bank statements, Deeds, every text from Jake, every transfer he'd sent with his small notes, still trying. I printed them page after page until the stack was thick enough to slam on a desk. Then I called Dad's lawyer. When he answered, I didn't let him lead. "This is Lisa. I'm calling to make something clear. If your client contacts me again outside proper channels, I'll file harassment. I have every document, every deed, every record. If he wants court, I'll see him there. Otherwise, he stays silent." The line went quiet for a beat. Then the lawyer coughed. I'll pass that along." "Do that," I said and hung up. By Monday morning, the family group chat lit up again, this time not about Wi-Fi or cars. "Dad, you think you're smart? You embarrass this family. You'll pay for that." "Lindsay, you ruined my credit on purpose. Do you even care if I can drive to work?" "Mom, why can't you stop making things worse?" I didn't type a word. Instead, I took a screenshot, saved it in the folder. Minutes later, Jake messaged privately, "Don't reply. They're baiting you." I smiled at the screen. My brother was learning. The next blow came when I pulled into my apartment lot after work and found my back tire flat again. Clean slice, not even hidden. A rage bubbled in my chest, but I didn't give it oxygen. I took photos, time-stamped them, filed the receipt after the tow. Evidence. Always evidence. Because if confrontation was coming, I wanted to walk in armed with facts. It didn't take long. Thursday night, my phone rang. Dad again. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear it straight. His voice was raw, gravel, and beer. "You think you're safe? Selling that house, cutting us off, humiliating us? You're nothing without family." I leaned against the counter, steady. "Funny. 3 months without you, and I've never been more stable." He snarled. "You think you've won? You've got nothing but scraps of paper. We'll bury you with or without a courtroom." That was the moment the fear snapped clean. "Then come at me," I said, "because every scrap of paper is proof. Proof of what I gave, proof of what you took, and proof of what you tried to destroy. You wanted me invisible. Now I'm undeniable." He breathed heavy, then slammed the line dead. The silence after that call felt different. Not heavy, clear. 2 days later, Lindsay left me 9 voicemails back to back, her voice pitched high, frantic. "You ruined everything. My car's gone. They're saying I might not even qualify for an apartment now. You did this to me. You've always been jealous. Admit it. Admit it." Each voicemail ended in sobs, threats, or long stretches of silence before she hung up. I saved them all. Sunday, I drove out of town to see Jake. He met me at the door, holding an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He looked nervous. "They mailed it to me by mistake. Meant for you." Inside was a letter on cheap printer paper, words typed in bold, shaky formatting. "Return the money from the house or face consequences." No signature. Just a printed line at the bottom. "Family comes first." Jake shifted on his feet. "They're spiraling. Lindsay's threatening to call every creditor she can. Dad hasn't stopped pacing. Mom," he shook his head, "she just cries." I folded the letter once, twice, slid it into my bag, then let them spiral. Jake's eyes softened. "You're not scared?" "Not anymore." That week, I finally did what I'd been holding off. I visited the county courthouse, walked up to the clerk's desk and requested certified copies of every deed, every transfer related to Traverse City. The clerk shuffled through files, stamped them one by one. The sound of the seal pressing down felt like thunder in miniature. When the folder was handed back to me, I gripped it tight. This was my shield, my sword, my answer to every lie they spread. Walking out into the sunlight, I felt taller. That night, I emailed scanned copies to myself, to a lawyer of my own, and even to a backup drive. If they wanted war, they'd have to face documentation thicker than their denial. The confrontation wasn't going to be in court. It was already here, in the slashed tires, the fraud attempts, the letters under doors. And now, I had their pattern cataloged. Late one evening, as I poured tea in my quiet kitchen, my phone buzzed again. Jake. "They've stopped yelling about you," he said. "Now that they just sit in silence. Lindsay stomps around, but Dad barely comes upstairs. Mom," It's like she's rearranging the same drawer over and over. I exhaled. They're running out of moves. Feels like they don't know what to do without someone to blame. Then let them choke on the quiet, I said. The real confrontation wasn't a single blowout argument. It was the slow collapse of a house that once stood on my shoulders. And now, without me, the walls were bending inward. I didn't have to fight them with fists or screaming. My counterstrike was silence documented, peace preserved, evidence ready. And it was working. Because the louder they tried to smear me, the clearer the truth became, to relatives, to Jake, even to themselves in the dark corners they avoided. One evening, I walked past my car parked under the yellow glow of the lot's street lamp. The new tires gleamed, rubber still fresh. My reflection stared back in the window glass. Behind me, the night was quiet. No eggs, no slashes, no notes. Just me, standing tall with a folder of proof and a life no longer owned by people who mistook silence for weakness. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and let the calm settle around me. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like I was the one dictating the terms. And somewhere, in that beige dining room across town, I knew they felt it too. 3 months after the last note slipped under my door, the silence finally felt different. It wasn't the heavy quiet that used to press on me at Sunday brunch, where every clink of silverware was an indictment. It wasn't the tense quiet of waiting for the next tire to be slashed or the next fraud alert to buzz my phone. This silence was mine. In that time, my parents never called. Lindsay never tried another desperate plea. Even the group chat had gone still. They were still together in that beige dining room, spinning their stories for anyone who would listen. But without me to bankroll the performance, the show was falling apart. Jake was thriving. Every month he sent his payments, sometimes $80, sometimes $200, always with a note, still trying. He'd picked up extra shifts, signed up for a certification course, even started cooking his own meals instead of living on fast food. I visited one evening and saw him standing in his tiny kitchen, stirring pasta in a dented pot, humming under his breath. "This place feels like mine now," he said. It was, and he had earned it. Watching him take those steps reminded me of something I had forgotten. I wasn't the family's safety net anymore. I was a person with my own life, my own quiet apartment, my own balance that finally stayed steady. I hadn't forgiven them. I hadn't forgotten the bagel at brunch, the laughter at my expense, the lawyer's threats, or the shredded paper jammed into my mailbox. But I didn't need to keep replaying it either. Distance had given me something forgiveness never could: peace. For years, I believed my worth came from what I paid for, what I fixed, what I absorbed so no one else had to. But letting go taught me that sometimes the bravest act isn't staying. It's walking away and letting people face the collapse they created. Mom once wrote, "Please don't hurt the family anymore." The truth is, I stopped hurting the day I stopped being their solution. They called it betrayal. I call it freedom. Now, when I hear the hum of my fridge or the click of my lock turning at night, I know those sounds belong to my life alone, and that is enough. If you've ever carried the weight of a family that only noticed you when you were useful, I hope my story shows you this. You're not required to keep bleeding for people who never offered a bandage. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to step back, hold your ground, and let silence do the talking. I'm Lisa, and for the first time, I'm free. And if this story resonates with you, if you've lived your own version of betrayal and survival, you're not alone. This is why we share. This is why we speak out loud what others only whisper. Here on Family Power Stories, we tell it straight. If my journey made you think, if it echoed something in your own, like, comment, and subscribe. Join us and let's keep giving voice to the stories that prove silence can be strength.